Hi, everybody. Welcome to Mark's Backyard Birds live tonight from Kansas City, Missouri. And that's one of the reasons I always want to start with that and let you know, of course, where we are. And if you would, when you sign in, if you would let us know where you're from. Some from your names. Dave from Rhode Island's pretty obvious. Shirley, not sure. I know you're on regularly. I can't remember where you live, but there are people join in from all over, and when we go to discuss things here, it can be important as to where you are when I give my answers. And the plan tonight is to talk about field guides and birding apps and ways to identify birds. And then, of course, we'll do our typical question and answer. So if you've got things you're wanting to ask, we'll go down roads of different angles if you want, and try to get some questions answered for you. But the reason I chose this topic is the one that's a classic topic for me to do from over the years. I've taught this many times. Look at there, Rooster from Columbia, Missouri. You're just down the road, not very far. So whenever people first start getting into birds and bird watching and bird feeding, identifying new birds can be very frustrating. And we get lots of questions on, and I teach a lot of classes and, basic bird identification, and I have videos on it and all. But one that we get consistently is what is the best field guide? And so I thought what I would do is I would go through the basics of field guides and some of the things that are confusing about them and help straighten that out. And then, hopefully give you enough information that you can make your decision as to which one you want to go with. And I want to preface this that there is no financial endorsement whatsoever from any of these companies. This is just my 35 years of bird watching and starting out and progressing and becoming an ornithologist is just my experience. And I endorse these different books that I'm going to show you and products just because of personal experience and what I believe in. So let's get started. Good evening, Steve. You're from South Alabama. Awesome. Jan's in Kansas City, right here in town. That's great. Welcome aboard. Well, there's two things about I say there's two basic kinds of field guides. Well, actually, within those field guides, there's two more basic kinds of field guides. So to me, the field guides are categorized for me into two basic groups, and that is photographic field guides, books that depict birds from photographs in their books. And then there's the art field guides, and those are the field guides that are drawn by artists. And usually in one field guide, it's one artist who does them all. Some field guides, there's multiple artists that contribute to it. But those are basic, and they both have their strengths and their weaknesses, and I'll give you my opinion on that. But the biggest question that really needs to be answered when it comes to selecting a field guide is, do I live in the East or do I live in the West? Where is East versus West when it comes to birds? And the simple answer, I don't know, we're trained that the Mississippi River is the dividing line for East and West. Well, the Mississippi River doesn't provide any kind of a barrier for birds. Really, the first physical barrier for birds that separates them out population-wise is the Rocky Mountains. So when a bird guide says East on it, then that means it's referring to the front range of the Rocky Mountains all the way to the Atlantic Ocean. And then Western field guides are basically the Rocky Mountains to the West Coast. So here in Missouri, we really live right in the middle of the Eastern field guide range. So that's that. First off, whenever you go to buy a field guide, and I have many times I've talked people out of buying a Western field guide because, again, they were going to go buy it, but they think it's because we live west of the Mississippi River. But no, believe me, East is the front range of the Rocky Mountains to the Atlantic Ocean. West is Rocky Mountains to the West Coast. So who else is joining in? Oh, we got another Rhode Island person. Aspects, my favorite bird feeder companies in Rhode Island, which I really like. Leo, I don't see where you're from. I understand pressing wrong buttons on the computer. Joshua's Southwest Michigan. Joyce Lowe from Cary, North Carolina, or Cary as we used to call it. I lived there right out of college for about a year out in Cary, North Carolina. And let's see, Raymond, Fall Rivers. Where's Fall Rivers? What state? Leo, let's see, Raymond. He says, yes, okay, all right. You guys are in, and we're going to get going here. I appreciate you all tuning in and letting us know where you're from. So we got East and we got West, and then we got photographic field guides versus art field guides. What are the pros and cons that start with a photographic field guide? This is probably the most popular photographic field guide that we have sold over the years. Is the Smithsonian Field Guide, and it has brilliant photography in it, as you obviously would expect from the people at the Smithsonian. Here's why I don't particularly love photographic field guides, and it has nothing to do with the photographs. It is the mental trick that photographs play on us. And that is when typically, especially for beginning bird watchers, when they see a photograph of a bird and they think that the bird outside their window has to look exactly like that photograph, which is not the case. There's individual variations in birds and, age and size and sex and lots of different things. And so sometimes photographic field guides can actually negatively impact people when they're trying to identify birds. Whereas if they see a drawing, a painting of a bird, they go, oh, well, that's how that artist drew it, maybe. And it doesn't have to look exactly like that, which is, and also usually in art field guides, you tend to have lots of different drawings of the same bird. Whereas in photographs, for the quality of the photographs and stuff, a lot of the photographic field guides only have one or maybe two pictures of a certain bird in it, and maybe not as many, the great variety as an art field guide. So that is, take it for what it is. If you like photographs, I totally understand. I have a lot of people who love the photographic field guides, and then and then people have their pros and cons of each way they want to do it. So, but the modern field guide got started by one of my heroes in conservation and bird watching, Roger Torrey Peterson. He kind of originated. He's considered the godfather of the modern field guide, and he developed a system with arrows pointing to the key field marks that you should look at when you're looking for a bird. Oh, Fall Rivers is in Massachusetts. Thanks, Leo. Mary Jo, yes, Birds of Missouri by Stan Tequila. Yeah, I'm going to be talking about that series of field guides for sure here in just a minute. With Peterson, you can imagine, back in the early part of the last century, whenever people were really getting into bird watching and so identifying birds, there was no resource for them to help them identify them. And Peterson really produced the first field guide to birds, in which he's a brilliant artist, and he drew every bird and he could and put them in there with key field marks and things. And it was the evolution of field guides. And I remember when I first started bird watching, there wasn't the internet, and there wasn't apps, and there wasn't, computers and things like that. When we went out bird watching, we called the back seat of the car the library, because you just didn't have one field guide. You and like John and I, the guy who got me started bird watching, we'd be out and he'd have 2 or 3 different field guides. I have a couple different field guides, and they'd all be in the back seat. And if we were looking for a bird, and the best example I can give of this is, I remember in Arizona, the first time I ever saw a rock wren. I think I can't remember which book. I maybe had National Geographic, one of the field guides, and I didn't like that, that drawing, or it didn't look like that rock wren I was seeing. But I thought that's what it was. But then I picked up Peterson's West, and that bird could have jumped off of that rock and landed in that book, and it'd have been an exact match to it. So some field guides will have, pictures that are just perfect for you. And that's why a lot of times people love having multiple to choose from, especially if you've got 2 or 3 different people birding. If each of you have a different field guide, you can compare notes and things like that. So, but Peterson started it all, and I definitely wanted to give him credit. and his field guides are still wonderful. I love them. The big complaint early about Peterson's field guides was that the maps that show you where the birds live were all in the back of the field guide. They weren't on the page with the birds, which was very frustrating for some people. And that the artwork was brilliant, but then they had to flip to the back of the book to see where the range map was. And there's a very, very famous quote by Roger Peterson at a meeting later in life. They were at a conference there, and he was eating lunch, and a lady came up to him at his table and said, "Mr. Peterson, you in your book on your map, it shows that I don't know what it was. I can't remember what it was. A house finch is not supposed to be in my state, but I've seen one." And Peterson's calmly replied to her, "Madam, birds have wings." And I love that quote. Yes, birds move around, and birds do turn up in different places, and they can move around. But that doesn't, you really should scrutinize if a field guide says a bird's not supposed to be there, then you need to look for a bird that you might be confusing with the one that you think it is, because the field guides are pretty accurate. And Peterson, like I said, got all that started. Mr. Peterson died now several years ago, and the current heir apparent to the field guide crown is David Allen Sibley. And the Sibley guides are wonderful. He has guides for all of North America, which are bigger books. And then he promises he never planned to produce an East and a West book. He just wanted to do the big book that he released first. But so many people, it was so popular that people wanted the smaller pocket-sized guide that they could slip in their back pocket while they're bird watching. And the only way to do that really effectively and to his quality standards, to have as many birds on each page that he wanted, was to produce an East and a West version so that they'd be small enough for you to use in the field. One of the most incredible things about David Allen Sibley and his guides are that he is drawn every bird in flight from underneath and above, which is amazing. That was never available to us over the years. And that was really to set the field guide apart, because that's how you see birds most of the time, when they're flying away from you or above you, or, you can see under their wings when they're up in a tree and things like that. So Sibley was the first to do that, and his field guides, they're our best sellers at our store easily. But he, like I said, he is a new heir apparent to the field guide world. Now, is it the field guide I recommend for everybody? No. In the world of field guides, I kind of group them into beginning field guides, basically all around field guides, and then advanced field guides. Now, as Mary Jo pointed out, if you're a beginning bird watcher, and you really are just wanting to identify birds in your backyard, then there probably is no greater series out there, in my opinion, than this Birds of series by Stan Tequila. He's a great photographer from Minnesota, and he has a field guide for almost every state. He lumps some states together, but most of his guides are available for individual states. And I've got one here. I'm going to put this back on me here real quick. There we go. All right. And this is Stan's book for Missouri, the birds of Missouri. And we sell birds of Kansas, birds of Colorado, birds of Iowa, birds of Arkansas, because we have a lot of people from our area that, are from there. They send them to their families in those areas. But believe me, these books, as wonderful as they are, and they are photographic guides. And one of the greatest things about them is they are thumb tabbed. And we'll see if I can get that. You can see they're thumb tabbed by color, so that whenever you when you flip through them, the thumb tabs are by the color of the bird. So if your bird is green, then you go to the green page, and within the green section, they're organized from the smallest bird to the largest bird within there. So it's very user-friendly, very simple. If you don't know anything about birds, this series is absolutely wonderful. Now, if you get into bird watching more seriously and you want to start, hiking and go on trips and go, 3 hours away, you want to go over into central Kansas, you want to go to North Carolina on vacation, you want to go to, you want to go to places, you need a more extensive field guide. These are not the ones for you because you have to, you really, to get good coverage, you'd have to have a lot of them. So they're great to have in your house, identifying birds in your backyard. And most of the birds that may, be on a nature trail near you, but really you need to get into the Sibley's East, is one that, is great for coverage. And like I said, everything east of the Rocky Mountains, and it's going to have much more, a greater variety of pictures for you. It was a great example today. I had a customer that was confused about a bird in his yard, and he was describing it to me, and we were going, and as soon as, we started talking to me, and I felt like it was a starling. But this time of year in molt, whenever the starlings are molting from their winter plumage to their summer plumage, their breeding plumage, they can get some funny looking patterns in them. And I was able to pull out the Sibley guide and show him that that bird he was seeing was between the winter and the summer plumage, and it can look like patterns. And he agreed right away that's what it was, and he knew what a starling was. But that a lot of field guides won't have that degree of detail in them, and it was great. Sibley had those like 6 drawings of starlings on the page that he could look at and see where it happened. So that's a great detail. And then, of course, if you are going to get into bird watching heavy, and you're going to go to South Texas, and you're going to go to Southeast Arizona, and some of the places where bird watchers love to go because they're looking for rare birds coming in from Mexico and places like that, my favorite field guide has always been the National Geographic Guide series. And I think they're on version 6 now, the 6th edition. And this book has always been the one that includes all the birds seen in North America. Even if they've only been seen here once or twice, they'll depict them where they end. And so if you're, like I said, you're down in the Florida Keys and you see a bird there that maybe from accidental from Cuba, Atlanta, it might be in this book and you can find it. So this is an advanced field guide, but it's also a very dangerous field guide for beginning bird watchers. Because when beginning bird watchers, they have a tendency to want it to be the rarest thing possible. And this field guide with all those rare birds in it, it's easier for some people to go, no, it wasn't a junco, it was a black-faced grassquit from the Caribbean. So so it can be a little confusing, and it's better to know, I think, a little to know more about birds whenever you step up to the National Geographic. It's a wonderful, wonderful bird guide. So the basics of bird guides, though, and when it comes to identifying birds, it is not just classic books. One of the things that people like are posters. This is Peterson's Guide to Birds of the Midwest, the Backyard Birds, and you can have it framed and put up on your wall. And these are the most common birds that you're likely to see in your backyard here in the heart of the country. And they have these for the desert Southwest and Northeast United States and Southern Florida and Northern California. They have lots of these posters, and people like that. And then another alternative that people like are these folding guides. And they're nice because you can lay them out on a table. This is one I've got here. And the birds, if you can see on the front, there's a front and a back, and you can just lay it flat on your table while you're looking out at your bird feeders, and you can narrow the birds on the other side. Some people like the convenience of those, and they come in lots of different things. This one's actually a woodpeckers of North America. The one on the screen is birds of the Midwest, so that's the most common birds there. But again, when you go for convenience, you're limiting the number of birds. So the more you're looking, if you want to take a bird hike, things like that, these tend not to be the best things for you. It may be your backyard. So you pay for convenience, but it's like when I sell binoculars, one of the things I always say is spend up to the level of your interest. So because you'll be disappointed if you don't. And it's the same thing kind of with field guides. You'll not, I said at the very first, if you only have one field guide, boy, that's a rare thing, because you'll use one for a while and then you'll see somebody else using another guide when you're out on a trip, and you go, hey, what's that one? And you flip through, oh, I like this, and you'll add that one to your collection. And that, because they have things like regional field guides. This one is Birds of the Midwest. Again, it's art / photos, but it's some people love it, and there's lots. There's regional field guides, there's state field guides, there's national field guides, there's east-west field guides. But if like, trying to give you the best advice I can on kind of what works for you. So, and then when you really get into it, there are books like this. And there are huge books that are just on families of birds, identifying gulls, identifying, sandpipers, and identifying warblers. Your library and your back seat will grow and grow and grow. Now, let's see. Oh, do I have an opinion on the Warbler Guide? Yeah, that is, it's an incredible book. And yes, if you want to learn a lot about a family of birds like warblers, the Warbler Guide is an absolute fantastic book, because there's so many things you don't think about when it comes to identifying birds. It is much more advanced than a lot of people think, and there are a lot of common mistakes that are made. There's transitional plumages, and believe it or not, I had a bird and got trapped in my store a few years ago. It was in my back room, and I called Mary because she's a great photographer, and I had her come over, and she took several pictures of this bird, and I couldn't identify it. And I've been bird watching for 35 years. And finally, we let him go. He opened the doors, let him fly away. And I sent the pictures of this warbler. It was a warbler. We knew that. And I sent the pictures over to KU, the Museum of Natural History over there, to a buddy of mine who's a world-class birder. And I felt so good when he replied to me. He said, Mark, I can see why you didn't know this bird. He said, this bird's super confusing. And he sent the pictures to the guy, probably the expert on our warblers in this country. And he came back with an opinion. He said, boy, this is a really confusing bird. It can happen. There's funny plumage. There's things that happen in birds, especially in molts. And then there's genetic misfits. I know you've seen pictures of the yellow cardinals. There's a few of them now been documented, which is that is incredibly rare. And the bilateral gonandromorphs, which are birds that are half male and half female. I mean, there's all kind of genetic misfits out there. So, the best opinion that could be made on that bird, it came back that they thought it was a common yellowthroat, but they just couldn't be sure. I mean, without DNA. So there are birds that can even confuse the experts of the experts. So don't feel bad when you can't figure a bird out. And I spend a lot of time on my computer, people sending me pictures they've taken, and I call it Name That Bird, where I'm helping people identify birds. And just like the customer in today with the starling question, I don't want people to ever feel bad because they can't identify a bird, because birds move around and they can look funny. There's lots of odd things about them that can confuse you. That's for sure. So, and there's a lot to know about bird identification. So, but hopefully these guides, and if you've watched me talk about bird identification, I always encourage you to, when you see a bird and you really want to figure out what that bird is, and you've never seen it before, is to take notes before you open the field guide. Because as soon as you open a field guide and start looking at pictures, your mind will get influenced by those pictures in that book. Whereas if you took some notes and you made notes about the color of the bill, or the length of the bill, and the color of the legs, and where there was a stripe through the eye, and someone just makes those things that stand out to you. And then when you go to look at the pictures in the book, and you go, did it have a stripe through the eye? Oh, it did. I wrote it down right here. And that helps you when you're learning to identify birds. Field notes are very, very important. All right. I don't have my producer with me tonight. She's out of town. So my wife, let's see, what do we got here? I have a pair of male Gila woodpeckers. That's funny. They visit your friend. Yeah. They, woodpeckers have sweet tooth. And in our area, Downies are the most famous for visiting the drinking the sugar water. But red bellies will do it too, and they're in that same family with the Gila woodpeckers down there. And I know that the Gila woodpeckers, they get the nectar from the cactus flowers quite a bit in that part of the world. So, yeah, It's so birds are wonderful, and they're varied all across the country, and getting to know them better is a magical thing. Hold on, I got one buried down here. I forgot to tell you. For those who need it, don't forget that you can find large print field guides, and those are for people who need bigger pictures and bigger text that you can. It helps you. I gave one of these to my mom years ago, in the same book, because it's harder for her to see and to read, and so I gave her one of these large print field guides when she was looking at her birds at her bird feeder. So, okay, to make sure there's not any questions, I'm going to talk about apps. I'm curious, do you guys have any favorite apps, birding apps that you use? I personally, this has changed the field guide world forever. These devices here, the apps are wonderful. They are amazing. I like Sibley's. That's no surprise. All this I'm showing you here tonight, but he has an app, and his artwork is unparalleled. And he has brilliant information. But the one thing about apps is that they also give you the songs of the birds, so you can listen. The Carolina Wren song. And so almost all the birds in the book have songs in them, and the app have songs in them. One thing I want to touch on right now, and I hate even bringing this up, but I do. It's part of my birding ethics that I really believe in. And some people will use a phone, they'll use a tape to play a bird song to get a bird to come closer to you so they can get a good picture or whatever. I do not believe in that. I stand totally against it on any of my bird hikes. I will not do it. And I believe that mainly because I feel like you're endangering the bird if you do that. If I did it on my hikes, then the 12, 15 people that are on my bird hike, they would do it. And then the people they would show it to would do it. Birds can get stressed out. And you're also in danger, I feel, of luring birds away from their nest, away from their territories. And you also stand a chance of intimidating a bird within its own territory. And he may even abandon that territory. So, be patient, use your ears, use your eyes, and you'll get to see the bird eventually. If you have patience. I think these devices are for lazy people. They want the quick fix, and they want to, and I think it endangers birds. So please don't do that. And that's my message. That's how I feel. So I want to get that out there. All right, let's see. Oh, yeah, the Cornell Merlin app, and I have that down to talk about it as well. The Merlin app's pretty amazing. This is the Merlin app from the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. I call it Shazam for birds. If you remember, your song's playing on the radio. If you have the Shazam app, you can hold it up and it records a few seconds of it. Then it tells you what the song is and who wrote it and sings it. Well, Merlin, this has been in development for several years, and it's finally come out, and it is functional in that you can play it or start recording. And any bird's songs that it hears, if it can hear it well enough, then it will give you an ID, a potential ID. Here's my problem, Joshua, with it. What I have learned as someone who knows bird songs really well, and I have a lot of my bird watchers that are addicted to this now. And they use it and they believe everything that app says. And I know for a fact that this app is not 100% correct. I'll give you a prime example. This spring, one of our best birding locations in spring migration has tons of red-eyed vireos. The woods are loaded with them. This app was continually identifying those red-eyed vireos as Philadelphia vireos, which are not common in this area. They're actually quite rare in migration. We see them every year, but not many of them. And I had, so one of my bird watchers telling me that, there were 20 Philadelphia vireos this morning. No, that's incorrect. That was not the case. So the app is not perfect. So, especially for people, the eBird reviewers, that if you submit checklist for the eBird reviewer wants to know, especially if it's a very uncommon bird like a Philadelphia vireo in our area, as to did you see the bird? No, Merlin said it was a Philadelphia vireo. So it's not perfect. I love the app. I love what it does, and it is incredible. The technology is there, but there are birds that confuse this app. So you can't, I'm just saying, you can't put 100% faith in what it's saying. Now, it really does a good job on the most common birds, but there are some that do confuse it. And that's just a warning. And Merlin's a great app. And the Cornell Lab of Ornithology is absolutely, in my opinion, the tops in the country. Cornell is the bird university, as we call it. For if you're going to study ornithology, then Cornell is a great place to look. And they also have, the internet being what it is today and used so much. Their website, All About Birds, is a great source of information if you want to go learn a lot about birds that you're thinking you're seeing, and you want to learn more about them. That is an incredible source for information, and if you support them, and they really appreciate it, they need funding just like everybody else. So the All About Birds from the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. All right, Joshua, I agree, Mark. I've seen it quite a bit. Yeah, I mainly use it as a guide, but also try to visually ID the bird. Thank you, Joshua. I love to hear you say that, because I have, when I tell people this, and I have people give me, funny looks, but that's Cornell. Yes, but it's the technology that's not 100% infallible. And you really, especially, it's one thing if it says it's a cardinal or a Carolina wren, or we know they're really common birds, but if it throws you a bird ID on there that probably shouldn't be there, it's better for you to get a visual confirmation of that, Joshua. You're right. Can honey be added to suet? That is a good question. Honey is not advised. I know, for hummingbird feeders, but I have never been asked that for suet. Shirley, I don't know that it would harm them, but I know it's totally not advised for hummingbird feeders. But for suet, I doubt that it would hurt the birds in the suet mix, though. Okay, can you take down the backyard bird brochure so we can see your larger on the screen? Oh, great. Yeah, sorry. I get to talking, and there you are. Absolutely. Sorry. That was a good idea. I'm sorry. The phone and the app. I didn't realize, I wasn't thinking about how small it was. And here's, if you can see how white out this is, that's the other negative of the apps and the phones and iPads out in the wild, is the glare on the screen can be really difficult to use the apps in the field. So that's another negative for them. But the Sibley app will cost you. You have to buy that, but you get free updates all the time. He had a really big update not long ago, and whenever they change the name of a bird, like right now, they just changed the Lillian's race of the eastern meadowlark out in Arizona. It was just a subspecies. Now they've changed it to its own species called Chihuahuan meadowlark, and it's already in the app. He's already updated it, and he's got it in there. So that's versus having to wait for a new print version of a field guide to come out. And that's a good point. That's the apps are great, but again, glare can be an issue when you're birding with them in the field. So, all right, let's see. You got any questions? Like I said, without my producer here tonight, I'm having to keep a better eye on the questions over here. Excellent. All right. Thank you, Joyce. That's a great suggestion. Sorry, I didn't do that. Is there another field guide that I didn't talk about that you really like? Everybody wants to know the most popular ones, of course, but you may have one in your area that you like. And another book that I did not, I did talk to a lot of local guides can be very, very good, and they're not nationally known, but for people in this area, these two guys here, Bob Gress and Pete Jansen, they came out with a great guide for the state of Kansas. And not only does it have the Kansas birds in it, but it has information on the birding hotspots within Kansas. So almost every state out there, if you check your local, especially bird organizations like your local Audubon chapters and stuff, and may get a recommendation on a local bird of your area. But this is one in our area is a great example of just a locally written field guide that is very, very helpful for local birders here. So in each of your states, when I travel, in most of my travels, like out west, like to Arizona and New Mexico and California, and when I'm birding out there, like I said, I do like the National Geographic guide a lot, or the Peterson's West. I've used that for years out in this part of the world. And then it just depends on where I'm going as to what guides I'll take with me. And the most important thing is to try to take good notes when I'm out there. I keep up with my checklist. I keep it on my life list very, very diligently. The computer program that I use for my computer life list is Birder's Diary. It's very, very popular, and it's very detailed and can separate your life list into many different categories. Your state list, your county list. So I use that product a lot, and it's wonderful. Yeah. David from National Audubon Society Field Guide to North American Birds. Thoughts? That guide, in my honest opinion, I haven't used it in a long time because early on it was awful. I thought that there were mislabeled birds in it. There were some of the pictures were really, really bad. And of course, all the birds were clumped at one part and all the information in the back. So there were a lot of things that I didn't like about that guide early on in my birding. And so it kind of left a negative taste in my mouth. Today, it may be a lot better. And I don't know. I have not looked at Audubon Field Guide in a long time. So I know that in my area, I don't recall seeing anybody using it on our bird hikes. And I do a lot of bird hikes, and I've seen a lot of people using a lot of different kind of field guides. But I'm sorry, I don't have more information on that guide. But I said early on, it was not good in my opinion. So yeah, again, I am a bigger fan, my opinion, of the art field guides. I always have been. And Audubon was a photograph field guide. And again, that is part of, whenever you get down the road and you start using, it's like 8 power binoculars versus 10 power binoculars. I have tried to go back to 8 binoculars, but I use 10 power. I have been for years, and I just can't go back. It's just, and that's kind of the photograph versus the art field guides. I kind of got on that, and I'm just a big fan of the art field guides. So absolutely. Well, guys, you guys have any questions on birds or backyard feeding or anything like that going on right now? Right here, we just got a pretty good snow yesterday, and it's supposed to down like 17 this morning, but it's supposed to be up to like 50 tomorrow. So welcome to the Midwest. If you know what I'm talking about here in Missouri, the weather changes rather drastically. And then this weekend it's supposed to be quite cold again. So the bird feeders are busy, and then not so busy, and then busy again. So a lot going on with them, and hopefully we're going to get. I love snow, so I do my snow and ice dance about every day. So I just look forward to at least getting some more snow before the winter's over. Do I remember which ones were just mislabeled? I cannot remember now. I can tell you, I remember that in the Stokes field guide, which was another photographic field guide, they had mislabeled a loggerhead shrike. They had a picture of a northern shrike, and they had mislabeled it. I remember that. But again, this is now 30 years ago. I'm trying to remember back, but I don't remember exactly which one it was. So, which one from back then. I wish I could. But the thing about when you do that in a publication, you have to wait till the next printing to get that corrected. And I remember the National Geographic guide when it first came out, it blew everybody away. But there were some laughable things in that field guide, though. And it took until the next edition came out, but they made, wholesale corrections on a lot of birds. And I remember one famous one, the Connecticut warbler picture. The drawing made this foot on this Connecticut warbler look like it was a gallinule. It was huge. And so what they did in the second printing of it, they just painted a leaf over the foot because everything else was great on the Connecticut warbler for an ID purpose, but it was just everybody made a joke about this huge foot on this bird, and so they had to wait to the next printing, and then they just painted a leaf over it. So it was pretty cool. So, if is it possible? My wife and I had seen a Baltimore Oriole at our suet feeder in South Alabama. Absolutely, Steve. We've actually. This has been a pretty incredible year for Baltimore Orioles in North America this winter. And I'm talking from much further north in Alabama. There's been some, over in St. Louis, they had a Baltimore Oriole at a bird feeder. And maybe somebody talking about one in Virginia. And, there's been some in some odd places this winter. And in Alabama, you certainly, South Alabama especially, I'm sure you could have one coming this late in the season from down there. We've got a Scott's Oriole, of all things, coming to a bird feeder in South Kansas City, which is a desert Southwest Oriole. And it's been coming to a peanut feeder here in Kansas City, which is, again, birds have wings, as Roger Peterson would say. What kind of feed can I use for cactus wrens, mourning doves, woodpeckers, etc.? Okay. For wrens as a whole, they really love insects. So dried mealworms are, it would be great for Carolina wrens, or cactus wrens. And then, of course, they love the peanut butter mixtures. I just did a video on, mixing peanut butter and fine sunflower chips and dried mealworms. Something like that would be very appealing to a cactus wren. Now, mourning doves are the vacuum cleaners of the bird world. They'll eat basically anything. Millet and safflower are their two favorite seeds that you can spread those on the ground. Woodpeckers are peanut lovers, but also suet. So peanut. So a good quality mixture, two quality mixtures, I think, is what you're looking for. You want, I think, a mixture without millet. It was just sunflower, safflower, and peanuts would be good for the greatest variety of birds. But make sure you have millet to throw on the ground to try to keep those dove and quail species and even a lot of the sparrows happy by throwing it on the ground. Whereas, up in your bird feeders, you can attract a greater variety of birds with sunflower and safflower and peanuts. So, all right. You guys have been great tonight. I gladly, you haven't mentioned the Audubon guides. Yeah. You must have joined in a little bit. We had a discussion about the Audubon guides and how, I'm sorry. And I know part of it is just early on in my career, I had a negative experience with Audubon guides. I didn't like the way they were set up. I didn't like the quality. They had a couple of birds mislabeled in it. I remember that was a big talk among bird watchers. And the biggest thing was that the pictures were limited, and they were all at one part of the book, and then in the back with the paper section was all of the information and the maps. And I just didn't like having to flip back and forth like that. And so I kind of got a negative impression of Audubon guides early on, and I've just never used them. And I was saying earlier that I just don't see Audubon guides on my bird hikes. Whenever I'm leading guide, people around here mainly, it was always, Roger Tory Peterson, the old golden guides were the two most popular for many, many years. And then these other guys have come in, but Sibley's is by far the most popular today when it comes to my bird hikes and things. So. Well, guys, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Your cardinals hate safflower. Wow. In fact, every bird just tosses them on the ground. That's hard to explain because I have a video going in my store on most days, and in this video is a friend of mine shot it from her deck here in Kansas City. It was winter, it was cold, 0 degree that day. And there's a tray feeder hanging from the deck arm, and there's nothing in it but safflower, just straight safflower in it. And for about 30 minutes of the video, 95% of the time, there's at least one, if not two cardinals on there eating that safflower. Squirrels don't come to it because they don't like it, but the chickadees come in and grab one and fly away with it. Titmice comes in and fly one away with it. But the cardinals are on there all the time, and the house finches love it as well. So I can't explain why one yard, it's like that and one is not. I blame it on a bird composition. I mean, if you have a lot of birds that don't like safflower, then it will go much slowly. But if you're saying the cardinals aren't eat it, man, that's what they eat in my yard, is they eat the safflower seed tremendously. And then striped sunflower is very popular with them, and black oil. But yeah, and I there's some things I just can't explain. Like I said, I sell safflower is the number 2 selling bag of bird seed in my store. So I sell tons, literally, of safflower seed every year. Wow, where are you, Wire Frost? What I missed it from up there. I just what part of the world you're in that they're not eating that safflower. You're welcome, Steve. Thanks, Meg. I don't know how to pronounce that. Yeah, I thank you guys for tuning in. You've been great. And like I said, I plan to do. We try to be live every other Thursday, and I try and the Thursdays in between. I try to post a video of on a certain topic. Again, always submit topics for me. I want to talk about what you guys want me to talk about, and I love doing it. And I know this Saturday I'm going to talk about feathers on Facebook, and then I'll post that one on YouTube next Monday night. And I'm really excited about the feather video. Feathers are intriguing. It's a great topic to talk about. So thank you. Oh, you're in Quebec. Okay. Well, how common are cardinals up there? I know they're a southern species, and that far north, boy, that you're getting way up there for cardinals. I know a few years ago they were rare in Duluth, Minnesota, and places like that. So Anne said that her birds love that, and Delaware love the safflower. Yeah, I have people that feed nothing but safflower. I mean, I have one customer buys 100 pounds of safflower at a time. So it just goes to show you that it really does vary. I mean, what works for some people doesn't for others, and that's why when you study wild animals, there's 2 words you learn to leave out, and that is always and never, because there's going to be a wild animal that proves you wrong. If you say, cardinals always love safflower, obviously that's not true. I mean, people will test about this, but I just try to give the best information that I can as to what has, worked over the years. So, all right, Joshua, thanks. We will look forward to seeing you next time. I have 4 of them in my yard. They were rare here. Yeah, the cardinals are moving north. They're a bird that the winter's not as harsh as they used to be. They have expanded north. So yeah, that's up in Quebec, that makes sense that you're getting them in there now. I don't know why they don't like safflower. Like I said, that's a mystery to me. Yeah. Again, thank you guys. We will talk to you in a couple of weeks. And until then, you guys, I always love to say, combine, let's talk birds, but send me an email. Send me some, what you want me to talk about, and I'll put together a program. Thanks so much, guys. Good night.